Welcome. Let me get Piper in here. Hey, I don't know what happened.
I know what happened, but I ain't gonna tell you because it'd be embarrassing.
Well,
So
tell me later. Tell me later. Thank you so much for joining me. Like, I don't know what just happened. That was crazy. I
yeah,
must
no
have went live like
problem.
3 times. Yeah.
No problem. It's all good.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I want to see if we could get a few more people in the room and then we'll get started. Hey,
Okay, that's
Julie.
awesome.
Hi, LaShawn.
Hello.
Okay. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Um, yeah. Are you in Atlanta?
hmm That's correct.
Yes. How's the weather?
It's warm today,
Good,
so
good.
it's been cold, but it's been warm as of late. So it's a little
Did it snow?
February warmth until it really starts getting to be spring, like March 1st. So it's not over yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah. Well, it is cold here. I'm in Connecticut,
Oh, you're in
and
Connecticut, okay?
yes, we still have snow. It was a warmer day, so it looks like things are starting to melt, but yeah, we just went through some real cold days.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we could get started.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is going to be recorded, so if you can't make it live, that's all good. Just come check it out later. But I wanted to introduce myself first, and then I want you to introduce yourself, Piper. So my name
Okay.
is Danny Simone. I am a luxury wedding dress designer based here in Connecticut and New England. And I have the pleasure of having my new favorite author, just so y'all know, Piper Huguley, who wrote this book. I mean, I want you to talk about it, and I really want people to hear from you. So I did send you some questions, and we'll see how things flow.
Okay.
Those who are watching, you can feel free to ask some questions in the chat. But Piper, please introduce yourself.
I'm Piper Huguley, and I did write by her own design about Lowe. And I have been recently on a track to write stories about unheralded, unsung, and unknown Black women across our history, and as by what we call biographical historical fiction. That's what I do in terms of that. And there are reasons why I do that and not the biography thing, which is something we could talk about if you want to. And I, my day job is that I'm a professor at Clark Atlanta University in the English department, and that's about it.
I mean, that's a lot, honestly. Honestly, that's so amazing. I was just telling my husband, I was telling him, like, the reason why I really love this book is because biographies, autobiographies, stories about people's lives are literally my favorite kind of novel or literature to read. And so
hmm
coming across this when it connects so closely with my own life as a designer, this is chef's kiss. And
hmm
you should see some of the DMs that I've received from people who are like, "Oh my gosh, you're going to talk to her?" And like this is a big deal. So I am so honored that you decided to grace us with your presence, and I want to know everything. I really want to know everything. So let's just get started, right? So let
Okay,
me ask you the very first question.
sure.
Um, and I have my questions here on my iPad because I
Okay,
cannot always remember.
okay.
But okay, so the first question is, when did you know? When did you first know you wanted to be a writer?
As people might suspect, given what I just said about myself, as a nerdy little kid. So I always, have been in that kind of um, area, if you will. Even sometimes grandmothers, they call you out and put something on you or whatever. When I was a little kid, she did call me professor,
Mm,
even as a little kid. So I would like do things, crazy things like assign myself
mm-hmm,
research projects
Mm.
and, just go down to the library and do basically what I didn't know what it was, but basically like doing research for like informative books or potential dissertation topics, or that's what I mean, is like I say, really weird, like kind of thing. So, and eventually it did occur to me, oh, I'm reading all of these things. I could write my own thing.
Mm.
So, and what it got to me was we moved to a predominantly white neighborhood
Mhm.
one summer, and I didn't want to leave the house. So I was ready to leave the house or whatever. I got to be a little bit like weirded out by this new neighborhood or whatever, which was, looking back on it, was utterly ridiculous. It was all just fine, but maybe I was being super dramatic, or maybe cultivating excuse to start working on my first novel, which I did not know was what we call now royalty romance.
Mm.
And yeah, and I did do all the research for it, and I ensuingly ran up our phone bill. That was back in the days when phone bills were charged per call and stuff like that, and um,
Wow.
put a lot of money on my poor mother, who we had just moved. I mean, just that summer moved to out. That is not the time to be running up.
That's
But and she was
amazing.
like, "What is this bill?" Da, da, da. And I said, "Oh, I was in here doing research for my novel." Okay. Oh, okay then. Yeah.
Wow.
So no, I didn't get punished or anything like that, because I had a very understanding parent in all
Mm.
kinds of ways up to that point. She had already been used to my weird shenanigans in terms of
Mhm.
things. So that's how I got started when I was 12, and it's been an on and off kind of thing
Mhm.
for a while, ever since.
Wow. Wow. When did you write your first book?
I was but your first real like book.
Like,
Because I said
yeah.
I was
Mhm.
like 12. I wrote a book then, but you say if it was like the one to be published for
Yeah.
other people to read, was in 2014. So that was yeah, almost 12 years ago now. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as I'm listening to you talk about, when you were younger, researching and doing all those things, it's interesting to me that also Anne Lowe started,
Hmm.
designing from a young age.
She did.
And yeah, so like reading the book, first of all, I know that some people might have questions about like, how did you come upon your research? But did you feel like any parallels in like as you were writing that book and then realizing like, well, yeah, I started as a child as well. Did you feel any kind of parallels there?
The parallels weren't to me, actually, but yet that
Hmm.
you're the very first person in all this to bring that up, which is very interesting. Since it came out in 2022, so that's good of you to ask that question. But the parallels that made me think about it were towards people in her during her lifetime, and they were kind of serendipitous kind of parallels, um, in terms of her, because my paternal great grandmother was born 2 years before in two Alabama counties away from Ann
Hmm.
Lowe.
Wow.
So that was one thing that was parallel. And then the other thing that was parallel is that my research work as a professor was in part about Zora Neale Hurston. And everybody, when they think about Zora Neale Hurston,
Hmm.
they think Florida, but she was born in Alabama around that same time, another two
Wow.
counties away.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yes. So, yes,
Mm.
the family, when she was three, from
Hmm.
Nutsagalagus, got up and moved to Eatonville. But she was
Wow.
born in Alabama and not far from Ann Lowe. And because I had been, as part of my dissertation work, doing research about Zora Neale Hurston, I had already had a certain kind of insight into what the girlhood of a young black girl prodigy might look like.
Wow.
Which I said, both of those things were quite serendipitous, because I see
Yeah.
somebody has typed a question about the research that
Hmm.
trying to reimagine what Ann Lowe's childhood would look like
Hmm.
was
Yeah.
important to rely upon that research I already done about Zora Neale Hurston, thinking about my own family narratives, to then be able to attempt to reimagine Anne Lowe's young years, because there's nothing there.
Yeah. Wow.
Jim Crow Alabama does not is not concerned with recording, keeping
Yeah.
record of the childhoods of young Black girls at that time. So, and to add to the fact that knowing her when she's born
Hmm.
also became a matter of important in terms of thinking about the consequences of the story
Yeah.
later. So, but the other, ongoing thing again about Jim Crow Alabama is, they're not issuing birth certificates
Yeah. Yeah.
at that
True.
particular point in time. The recordings in the family Bible,
Hmm.
that's how Zora Neale Hurston got outed in terms of how old she really was like she'd been lying about that all of her life because
Hmm. Yeah.
she always was trying to knock off a few years or whatever. I think her thought was,
Hmm.
black don't crack, so she's, not gonna, you know, who knows, kind of thing. Even Alice Walker, when she put the headstone up for her, she put up the latest year that Zora claimed, 1903 or whatever,
Hmm.
but she was
Hmm.
actually born like 12 years before that,
Wow.
So, and what out of her was the family Bible have been rediscovered. And, when it's recorded in there and then there's somebody else
Hmm.
after you, you can't adjust the
Hmm.
records. But with not having those records, then you have to engage in an act of what Sadia Hartman calls fabulation, in terms of putting
Yeah.
together these bits and pieces of things that do exist in the archive to create something that's probable
Yeah.
as a reality. So that's part of what I did.
I mean, I feel like you did an amazing job just like explaining Anne Lowe's life so that we kind of could get a picture of it.
Hmm.
Because, like what you just mentioned about Zora Neale Hurston, is that my great grandmother, sorry, she passed when I was 13. So I'm 44 now. So she passed when I
Hmm.
was 13 in the mid 90s, early to mid 90s.
Hmm.
And we also had no idea how old she was.
Hmm.
So she had been telling us for a long time that she was like, we thought she passed when she was like 89,
Hmm.
but actually family has said no, we think she was about 100
Hmm.
because there were no records, there was no way to know,
Hmm.
and there were no other family members her age, so
Yeah.
it was really
Yeah.
hard to understand how old she was, but certain things kind of got people, I think she was about 100, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think that's pretty interesting that that's like a common thread in a lot of Black Americans. So my mom is from the South. She
Hmm.
was born in Columbus, Georgia, raised
Okay.
in Nashville,
Yeah.
and then she came up north. And like a lot of my family, they came up north as well.
Hmm.
So because of that, a lot of Anne Lowe's story, this is so interesting to me. A lot of Anne Lowe's story, even though I was born in 1981, similar attitudes and mindsets
Hmm.
still were pervasive even in my life as a young lady growing up in Connecticut. So
Yeah.
it's just so I just thought it was just such an interesting story. And I wanted to ask you a question about like how you came up with the idea to write, not just write the book, because it almost read like a diary. But
Hmm.
then I told you that I listened to the audiobook first.
Hmm.
And I got
Hmm.
to tell you, I felt like a lot of healing within me. I don't know how to explain it,
Oh, that's
but I felt
awesome.
a lot of healing in me because in my family, a lot of people passed away when I was in my teens. And
Hmm.
so listening to the narrator, it felt like I was listening at the feet of one of my aunties.
Oh, that's great.
That
I love
was
that.
that was just so beautiful, and like I never read anything that affected me like that.
Yeah, oh,
So
that's awesome. That's made my
yeah,
day, week, and month. I love that. So
yeah, yeah,
because to be able to recover these lives, to bring across, like I said, I have a lot of interface with younger people especially, but to be able to bring across the lives of those who've gone before so that they understand what has gone before is the point of the whole thing,
yeah,
for me. And but most particularly, I'm glad that you mentioned the audio, that you enjoyed it, because I was very insistent on having that particular narrator.
yeah,
I selected her. the publishers tried to get me to go with somebody else, and I put my
Oh,
foot down and said, no, it's
I'm glad.
Tracy.
Yes.
And I said, when I heard her narrating another friend's book, I was like, it's her, and I'm so glad that she agreed to do it. As you know, an actress, because for the longest time in the first part of my publishing career, it was
Hmm.
difficult to get narrators who were
Yeah.
Black. Actually, I have had friends who have cringeworthy
Hmm.
audiobooks out there, not narrated by a
Yeah.
lot of people, but with Black protagonists in their stories.
Yeah.
Something you can't
Hmm.
redo that stuff because it's very, very expensive. So, but it seems around, maybe it was like those around the before 2019ish or something like that.
Hmm.
Some Black actors and actresses got wind of the fact that, hey, this could be a gig,
Yeah. Yeah.
and started doing it. So I was so glad that Tracy wanted to do it and came on board, and she thanked me afterwards, which doesn't always happen in
Yeah.
terms of the production of the audiobook. So I'm so glad to hear that it was that for you, like the
Yeah.
yeah, because it's so much part of even what I do in terms of the day job. This whole thing that I have in terms of getting my students to think about ancestors, in that
Hmm.
way.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say enough beautiful things about this book. And so the voiceover or the narrator, so
Hmm.
did she do all the voices?
Yeah.
Oh, she's
It's
phenomenal.
just
She's
her.
phenomenal.
It's her.
I thought
Yeah.
I was like, did they change up a little bit? Was it another lady? Because I caught like the New York Jewish lady voice.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
Hmm.
caught like just all the different voices, and I'm like, this can't be
That
the same
is
person. She's
that is an
phenomenal.
actress one
Wow,
woman show. She
she's
did
phenomenal.
all of
Wow.
that herself. It's a good question because people who are into audiobooks, and apparently from what they say, it's something like now 1 in 5 book sales are audiobooks. That has really gone on the increase.
Yeah.
Um, there are a lot of publishers who do more casting in terms of using multiple voices for
Yeah. Yeah.
books, whatever. Like my second book did have 2 actresses, whatever, but this
Hmm.
was with her
Wow. She's
all by
phenomenal.
herself. Hmm.
It just like listening to the audiobook, and I think that was the best way for me to engage with it. Listening first because I was sewing, I was working, and so many things that Ann Lowe said, I'm just like, wow, that's how I think.
Hmm.
Like when she
Hmm.
would say things like, or I know that you had to take creative liberties, but I feel like you were spot on when it
Hmm.
came to just thinking about like making my beautiful dresses, or this place. I can't wait. Oh, look at all that fabric. I'm gonna be able to make all those beautiful dresses and all this stuff. And it's like that's literally how we think. A
Hmm.
lot of designers, when we think about our craft and we think about what we're going to create, that's literally all that stays on our mind is how we're going to create this next thing, and just dreaming of the next idea and just all the beauty that you're going to create. And I just thought that was so good, just like hearing that, because it also made me feel validated too, for myself. Yeah, like
Hmm.
as a designer. So just as a quick backstory, I think it's interesting. One thing I wanted to let you know was that when I was a child, I thought I would be three things. One is a designer, and I was a precocious child. It sounds like we were pretty similar. I would
Hmm.
be drawing. I would be like, I have to create this whole collection and have to draw all this stuff, like as if somebody told me I have to do it. And I would be just working. Another one was I wanted to be a singer, and I used to sing at weddings.
Okay. Okay.
But the last one is I wanted to be a writer.
Hmm.
And I actually was a really great writer. I haven't written in a long time, but I used to win a lot of awards, like any kind of like, essay contests or anything like that. Everybody would be like, oh, you need to get Danielle. She's the one. Get her. She. So I just thought it was so interesting that when you shared your story, first of all, and then also just your tone in writing was so unique that it made me feel like, wow, how come I never realized that you can write in this way? That it
Hmm.
doesn't just have to be like, I walked through the store and
Hmm.
I did, that the way that you wrote that was very personal, but it was also so creative and unique. And like I said, I can't say enough good things about it, but you awakened in me the desire to write again because
Oh,
of this
good.
book. So I feel like, like as I'm messaging you and I'm like, okay, I can't figure out TikTok, but maybe we could do this. And just like your openness and willingness made me feel like, I feel like this is a meant to be kind of situation, and to be able to talk to you and hear your story. And then just how it kind of crosses paths with Ann Lowe's, it just feels very, like I said, very healing and very validating. So
Excellent. I
yeah.
love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
So let me go back to these questions.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. I just love the flow of what we're talking about, though. So, I like to go off script a little bit if we can.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. What made you feel like the story of Ann Lowe was one that you needed to write?
Well, what part of my little nerdy investigations, like that I would assign myself when I was a child, every summer when there wasn't school, one summer it was the Kennedys. So I got into that and learned all about the Kennedys, and I was 8 or 9 years old, and part of that research for me at that time was finding out who were the Black people in their orbit. I sort of remember asking my mother, this very pointed question, so, if they were these rich white people, why did they feel compelled to do X, So I was like, and my mother was probably like, this crazy child I've been settled with. But that was part of me trying to figure that out and find out things like Kennedy did have the first Black Secret Service agent. He actually did have the first Black astronaut, but he couldn't go up with all the others in terms of the space program, and then finding out in terms of Jackie about Ann Lowe. And that was something that I knew about within my family. While my mother sewed. She made a lot of our clothes. We were younger, etc. So I got, an understanding or insight from being the one who was always like keeping her company as she sewed, in terms of that. But the whole aspect in terms of her putting together looks, that was the whole thing in my family, like in terms of designing. But it was, sort of in the back of my mind. It wasn't anything that was in the front of my mind until, I spent a couple of years researching what it might be like to have a career as an author as opposed to a writer in this 21st century environment. And part of that for me was going to conferences and meeting other people, meeting other writers, connecting, networking, that kind of thing. So an editor that I had networked with, she had a practice back when people were on Twitter, back in the old days, before it was whatever it is now. And she would retweet these subjects, particularly in the wake of 2020. We know what 2020 was, in terms of there being more curiosity about unknown, unheralded, unsung Black history. So, one of my friends she retweeted an article about the 6888. So if you had seen that movie on Netflix, right, my friend had gotten a contract to write the biographical historical fiction book about the 6888 with this editor. And I knew this editor from other conferences and stuff, so I knew her already, which helps, it helps when you know the people, that you've met them before, face to face. And so she retweeted an article about Ann Lowe, which like, oh, I remember who Ann Lowe is. I know who that is. But, it was like, let me read this article. And when I read the article, I instantly knew that this was the kind of life that would be able to have this kind of treatment. Not every life has the dramatic ebb and flow like Ann Lowe's does. And this has been something I've been studying for a while. I've been looking at it for a while. There was some other people that I've been working on in terms of thinking about that. And so when she retweeted that, looking pointedly for this story about Ann Lowe, I was like, oh, this might be able to help me to get a foot in the door. Reading the article, looking at pointedly what Margaret's research was and her blog that was out there on the internet. And almost instantly, two things occurred. This is the big nerd Nick that I am, so to say. When I looked up her dates of birth and death, I instantly knew that the day that she died was the day before Charles and Diana's engagement was
Mm.
announced. I did
Yeah.
not have to look that up. I knew it already. And I
Ah.
said, could you imagine her, this designer who was always chasing commissions,
Mm-hmm.
knowing, and you just told me what birth year you were born that year.
I
So I
was.
will tell you, because I was around even though I was a child, but I remember this. Everybody had been wondering when, old Charlie was going to get married. And everybody knew when he got married that it was going to be huge,
Mm.
that it was
Yeah.
going to be whatever that wedding dress was going to be, it was going to be a big thing. So, like I said, I
Yeah.
thought, okay, well, wonder, she would be there potentially dying and knowing that she wasn't going to get to see it and she
Yeah.
wasn't going to get to make it. And it would cause her
Mm-hmm.
to be able to reflect back on her contribution and how
Yeah.
it went awry. So
Mm-hmm.
almost quickly, I was able to write the prologue.
Mm.
I was previously somebody who was anti-prologue, but
Mm.
all of a sudden in that moment, I was like, I know what prologues are for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wrote that prologue
Mm-hmm.
and sent it to my agent. And I said to her, tell
Mm.
Tessa I am on this and do not give it to anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got the contract to write the book.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's really amazing.
yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting, like you mentioned about 2020. That's when I first actually learned about her because people started sharing, little known Black designers, Black artists,
Hmm.
Black, all kinds of Black folks. And when I first learned about her, I would save everything I saw, and I did wonder at that time, like, why is there not more information about her? Why can't we find, books or any kind of work? And, I went to fashion design school. How
Hmm.
come we're not taught about her in fashion
Mm.
school? Like, to me,
Wow.
this book needs to be required reading for every. So I took fashion history, right, in
Yeah,
fashion design school. This should be required reading in fashion history courses because it
appreciate
because
that.
it, I mean, it spanned all these years.
Hmm.
I mean, Dior's new look, and I love what you said about new look because actually I had a similar thought, and I talked to my husband about it. I talked to other. I'm like, I think we're not
Mm.
gonna go there. If people haven't read
Okay.
the book yet, you need to read the book. And I don't know if you guys heard, but I'm also giving away a copy. So I don't even know what I'm gonna ask you guys to do if you want a copy. Just the first person who writes something in the comments, you can get a copy. I didn't even thinking about it, but I just thought it was so interesting, and so she really did get sent to Paris Couture Fashion Week for
as a
a Black publication.
correspondent,
Wow,
for this now defunct Black
wow,
newspaper in New York. That's how she got sent there. But when she went, I was like, oh yeah, this is my opportunity
it
to
is,
get to go to
yeah,
Paris. So
yeah,
yeah, the created part of that was not necessarily her encounter with Dior or whatever, but Olivia de Havilland
mm-hmm.
facilitating it.
Yeah,
Because I had this whole aspect about her with Olivia de Havilland, and come to find out that she did not get to meet Olivia de Havilland to make that
yeah,
seminal gown that she made for her when she won Best Actress in 1947,
wow,
which was heartbreaking
yeah, of
to
course,
find out. That she was just told by Sonia, put your 10 gold fingers, whatever, if you could make a dress, what would this be? What would it look like? And that
mm-hmm.
was the dress that she came up with. And like I said, in terms of fashion history, I'm not an expert. I'm far from an expert, but I think that she started a thing with strapless
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
dresses with
yeah,
that design. Like,
yes,
because in 1947, people were not doing that. I mean, there had been a thing even in the 19th century with women wearing low cut things, but not
yeah,
strapless.
yeah, mm-hmm.
And that got to be huge and kicked off huge with Elizabeth Taylor when she was in the movie A Place in the Sun in
Yeah,
1950. But before that, don't think it was Ann Lowe made Olivia de Havilland dress. So
Yeah.
when you say like people don't get credit or what's behind these things, whatever,
Hmm.
one of the things that I've come to see a lot
Hmm.
is that there very oftentimes is a marginalized person
Of course. Yep.
in some way behind
Hmm.
the thing. Trends,
Yeah.
invention, something
Yeah.
new, whatever.
Yes.
Mhm.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah,
I mean, that's something that I tell designers even now. That often you will find the trends in small independent designers who
right,
don't have the big platform. And
right.
then, I mean, this is a longer conversation, but a lot of designers have said big companies have come, looked at what you've done, and stolen your ideas.
Yep,
And because they
yep,
have a bigger platform, they're able to capitalize off of it.
yep,
Whereas the smaller designer, well, they're a wellspring of ideas because this
yeah,
has happened to me. And I'm just like, that sucks, but at the same
yeah.
time I have more, and it's going to keep coming up with more and more, so um I do think though that is a conversation that needs to be had,
It does, it
because they
does.
really do watch small designers. So
Yes.
yeah. Is the Olivia de Havilland dress your favorite by Ann Lowe, or what's your favorite dress by
Well, once I found out in that when I first saw her in that tape on the Mike Douglas show,
her? Hmm.
when she divulged about that dress that she hand painted those flowers on,
Hmm. Hmm.
as opposed to stenciling, because I just looked at them and I just presumed, oh, she just stenciled that on there, No, she hand painted. What?
Hmm.
I had new respect
Yeah.
for that dress.
She's an
A,
artist.
a pretty amazing,
Yeah.
gown that she made. But when the exhibit happened at the Winter Fair back in 2023,
Hmm.
they exhibited the wedding dress that she made in 1968 for that doctor's daughter.
Hmm.
So, I don't know if you got to see the exhibit or you have
No, I didn't.
the
No.
book,
Mm-mm.
it shows
Mm-mm.
it in the book.
Okay.
Anne Lowe, American Courtier, right
Okay.
across from that, there was the doctor's daughter, who the year before she was married in 1968. She had a recital, so she did a recital gown for this young black woman, and then she did her wedding gown, and that wedding gown
Hmm.
is majestic. It was, just when people think about bridal fashion from 1968, it's far from typical. It is a very medieval kind of
Mm.
cast to it from that kind of age. It was ivory, but
Hmm.
it was, you could just see the love that she put
Mm.
into
Yeah.
that dress. It was phenomenal. It was displayed on the other side of it, was displayed the recreation that was done of Jackie's dress by the
Hmm.
professor at
Yeah.
University of Delaware and the students, whatever, which I like
Hmm.
that kind of learning. I was like, yay, good for
Hmm.
them.
Yeah.
The students got to learn, that's a
Yeah.
lot of work, and all of that.
Yes.
But it paled in comparison to,
Hmm.
it just had an energy around it. I can't explain. Um, it
I'm
just
gonna have
was,
to check that out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the thing I said that's cool about the coffee table book are the essays that are in there by several Anglo scholars and all of that, but that they also do the thing in terms of taking pictures, not just of the outside of the garment, but the inside, which is also very important
Yes. Yes, it is.
to understanding, because it was because of Margaret's thesis, and part of her
Hmm.
thesis that she wrote, she took pictures of the insides of
Hmm.
the gowns, and there's also a clip of her on YouTube explaining and showcasing the insides of an Anlo creation that let me think about what Anne's process might be like
Yeah. Yeah.
for writing the book.
And even like, okay, Anne could also create patterns in her mind.
Hmm, hmm.
And like within the design world, that's like the unicorn.
Yeah, right.
It's the
Hmm,
unicorn is also everybody wants to be that unicorn. That is
hmm,
what I aspire to as well. And to
hmm.
hear her talk about that, it actually helped me to start visualizing better. Because, like, typically when you talk to somebody who can do that, they don't really tell you how they're doing it.
Right.
But the more, like, one thing I've been doing lately is I've been collecting vintage patterns. And what I
Yes,
do is I
yes.
study them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm studying them, and I feel like they're just kind of like becoming files in my mind. So it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this is how you do this, and this is how you do that. But Anne Lowe was doing that in a time when, like, you couldn't do that. You couldn't just go purchase a pattern and take a look
Right.
at it. You couldn't go study someone else's work. I mean, I do know that her being able to see her mother and her grandmother's work
Right. Right.
was obviously
Mm-hmm.
pivotal. But still, the fact that she was able to access that, and I want to talk about this story really quickly. Something that really stood out to me. Like, first of all, I cried through this book. Okay. But the one thing that, I did share something on my Instagram, I think it was last week, where I talked about being a DV survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read her story of how she basically left her first husband,
Mm-hmm.
um, it put me back in those days for myself as well.
Wow.
And but also not just that, just when you think about, like, that she had gone through such loss. Her grandmother has a stroke,
Yeah.
then her mom drops dead. I mean, that hurt me.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my gosh, she was so young to pass
So,
away
yeah.
like that. And then Anne was so young,
Mm-hmm.
and she had a baby, she was like a new mom. And then for her grandmother to pass away, and then for her first husband to take her from that, from where they were living, and bring her to, what was that, like a little seaside kind of town kind of
Yeah,
deal.
yeah, Dothan. It's
Yeah.
not, it's, I usually go back and forth through Dothan. Like whenever I would go for writing retreats down to Florida
Hmm.
from here in Atlanta, they make you go through
Yeah.
Dothan. And when I found that out, I was like, that place is like a nothing place. But apparently it
Hmm.
was this place where these citrus
Yeah.
people would come north from Florida to try, I guess, think they were finding a place that was cooler
Yeah.
and not as
Hmm.
crowded. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
And so she goes there. He um, forbids her to sew. The one thing that she loves, it's part of her. He forbids her to sew, but she ends up meeting Ms. Lee
Hmm.
at the store.
Hmm.
That was like, and then, like, everything that happened after that. Like, again, I said I don't want to give away the entire story, but
Yeah.
everything that happened after that was just, it was just beautiful, and, like, it was exciting, and I love the pacing of the book. Like, I just, like, because, like I said, I listened to the audiobook. I
Hmm.
finished that in, like, what was a day and a half. Then I
Okay.
got the physical book, went through it so fast, and now I'm just like, I actually purchased a third copy. So it's like, this, to me, like, your pacing, the way you told the story, and then also just, like, this was her life, was just, it was exciting, it was sad, it was a lot of ups and downs,
Hmm.
but at the end of it, it's just like, what an amazing story, of
Yeah.
struggle and survival, um, about her grandmother. So her grandmother she was a slave.
Hmm.
Okay. And then what was he called? The
General.
colonel paid. Yeah. Can you tell
Yes.
me like, explain that a little bit more?
Yes. Apparently, from what she had conveyed in terms
Hmm.
of family lore, that her grandmother's gift of sewing with the family, the people that she was enslaved with. I was sort of think about the language always around that because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so cringe,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
very idea. The family that she was enslaved with loved her talent. And this is, one of these things like, where they didn't want to let her go. But this man had come and had the money.
Hmm.
And one of the, even when I have to teach this whole, so if it's a book in terms of literature where someone's enslaved or whatever, I say, notice how often one of the things that's often is like the enslavers usually they're kind of dumb, like they're
Hmm.
not. very bright
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in terms of whatever it is they're doing, right? Whatever. But, and that, kind of means that they're fostering some kind of dependence upon, this
yeah,
person who they know is like the real source of strength or
yeah.
creativity or whatever. No,
Mhm,
please don't let her go, whatever. And part of that, not being too bright involves money
mhm.
issues very often. So they want the money, right?
Yeah,
So they struck this deal apparently that meant that if Georgia and the general would stay nearby, stay close or whatever, then they would agree for her to be free.
mhm.
Which, like I said, Anne is thinking about, is that really free? If you're
Yeah,
like
yeah,
having to, stay
yeah,
with these people or whatever. But part of the thinking about their thinking in the way the ancestors thought is thinking about what they thought of as a good deal.
yeah.
We look
Mhm.
upon it as like, oh, cringe. That's not
Yeah,
cool at all. But for her at that point in time, thinking that she's technically free and
yeah,
still can do or whatever and live in a house with her husband, and she probably thought it was a good deal. So,
yeah. And I mean, to me, it does seem like from a modern lens, yeah, it's like, are you still enslaved? You know?
hmm hmm
But
hmm
from that time, I guess like if you're thinking about like the difference between, someone who doesn't have a trade that is valuable
right.
versus someone who has a trait that's valuable. And yeah, and I've never heard any story like that before. So
hmm
yeah, that to me that was quite interesting. And then she passed that skill down to her daughter, who
right,
also passed it down to her daughter,
right.
to Anne. And
And
what I
yeah,
thought
and
was
apparently even
mhm,
after I wrote the book or whatever, it was another great grandmother. It was another generation back.
and I was
But
wondering that too. Yeah,
yeah, she never said anything about, so we don't know
mm,
anything about what Grandma George's mother,
yeah.
did to her. But then she definitely would have been enslaved in that circumstance and situation.
Mm. It's interesting. I actually saw some what was it like auctioneer notes or something like where they have like a bill of sale.
hmm
And I remember seeing on there, you know, a woman who was sold and she
hmm
was a seamstress.
hmm
And I think she was like 27 or something like that. And it was a note like she was a very good seamstress. So
mm
that's interesting that is something that was very valued.
Yeah, but still,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, so I wanted to ask another question. I kind of forgot. So let me look at these questions to see if my
Okay,
memory
okay, go
back
ahead.
to me. Um, oh, it was okay. It was about basically, like, how did you feel learning about like how Anne Lowe, um, when her mother died and the grandmother died right after, and all that, and how she had to just quickly take on all those orders when she hadn't been allowed to sew like that before. Like, what did that feel like for you to hear that or to find that out?
The thing that got me about that particular situation was not, I mean, her thinking about Grandma Georgia and her mother, as the way I wrote it, and I think the way that I saw the situation, they knew she was special.
Mm-hmm.
They knew she had something already.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that they conveyed that to her gave her the strength that she needed at that particular time to go ahead and finish the
Mm-hmm.
commission, that they believed in her
Yeah.
in that way. And it had to be something because when she retells it in
Yeah.
that Ebony article in 1966, that mattered to her. That was
Yeah.
important. Um, but the thing, like I said, that always strikes me was that the first lady, the incoming first lady
Mm-hmm.
of Alabama, who was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your mother, but what about my gown?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A
Okay.
lot of this book sticks in my brain, and so I sometimes think about things like that. Like, did she really say that to her? This young woman who just lost the two most important people, and this is what you're worried about, like dresses. But I understand that it was a different time, and like Yeah, I don't feel like I'm built for that, right? I think that
Yeah,
is good.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
2026 because I don't think I'm built for that. And I don't understand how she had so much strength even in the face of all that and
Well,
all the
keep
things
in
she had to
mind at
go
that
through.
point, and I guess this is another thing, and it was another thing that apparently she backed away from talking about it because
Mm,
she realized people were horrified about her
yeah.
early marriage,
Yeah. Hmm.
etc. Which is an interesting thing because I've had many, many, many book clubs, right? All
Hmm.
from, whether they're Zoom or in person or whatever. And, a lot of times, whether it's in the South or whatever, in
Hmm.
terms of this, somebody would, raise their hand and say, my grandmother was
Hmm.
13, she was 14, she was 15 when she got
Yeah.
married. Da, da, da. If we go back
Mine
far
was.
enough,
So was mine. So
see?
yeah.
See
I
what I
mean,
mean?
12 is the youngest I've heard,
12
but
is the youngest that you've heard,
yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's not, 18, right?
Yes,
And
it's
when you
not.
consider the year that I published this, that Tennessee was up to some shenanigans about it. They were trying to pass a law about marriage and they forgot to include the age and
Mm.
had to go back and put in 18 and older.
Wow.
And so, given all of this stuff going down about the Epstein files and all that, this has been an
Hmm.
ongoing thing,
Hmm.
like that
It
people
is.
have not wanted to talk about. But
Yeah.
now I think is coming to light in
Right.
this way about this the line that is drawn for girls, right?
Yeah.
It's always young girls
Yeah.
in terms of their maturity, but her having to live that horrific. Sorry, and I don't call him her husband; I call him the predator,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah. He was an
Yeah,
abuser. Yeah. No.
just this
Yeah.
horrible person um, who like that I presume, like I said, and this is a task for a biographer to find out how he got in there,
Yeah.
right? But the whole question of who her father was, and the way I had it in the book, the whole notion of him coming to know him through peonage was
Yeah.
an area of Southern history that I had researched for another book.
Hmm.
That I said, oh, this is the way in which we can put him in, and he's kind of nefarious anyway. So
Yeah.
we'll put him in, you know,
Yeah.
in these questionable circumstances, whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but that whole circumstance set her up to be more mature than she would have been at a 16-year-old today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have people in my classes who are in their 20s and stuff who, you know,
Hmm.
so yeah, and the
Yeah.
fact she was a wife and
Hmm.
or
So young.
captive, and
Yeah.
mother
Hmm.
meant that she could take that on.
Yeah.
And this adultification of black girls, right? Is an
Hmm.
ongoing aspect and thing that, like I said, that we're just starting to hit
Yeah.
talking about. But and yes, a lot of people were talking, oh, that beginning part was so da 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 da. But if this book has contributed in some small way to getting people to talk about the fact that it happened, and to just try to put it into, oh, those ignorant Southern people, is
Mm. I mean, it happened
this is what I'm
everywhere.
saying,
Right?
right? This is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, that's
Okay.
not true. So,
I mean, I guess it's a way to distance oneself from the unfortunate and not right parts of the past. But like if we
mhm.
if we're gonna tell the truth, we gotta tell the whole truth.
Right,
You know?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. I know like we're getting close to 8 o'clock, so I don't wanna, keep you too long. I think
Okay,
we should talk about Jackie's dress.
okay.
And I do have one very specific question for you, which is um because okay, so when was this? Maybe last summer, somebody posted a picture, maybe it was Vogue, like Vogue Weddings or something like that, posted a picture of Jackie Kennedy in her wedding dress, and they did not say anything about Anne Lowe in 2025. Okay.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I I politely wrote that, the maker of the dress was Anne Lowe. She did not receive credit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, I got people responding like, "Oh, does it matter the color of the dressmaker?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, first of all, for them not to put it in 2025, because this was last year, for them still not to put that in 2025, this is the problem. This is the issue. And so, I guess the thing, so, besides that, the fact that she had to remake the dresses,
Right.
and I thought it was beautiful that she got the help of her church, but the
Yeah.
fact that she had to remake the dresses in that short amount of time, like, what was it like to research that and just kind of come up with like how she would have felt? Which
Well,
I
there are
can
certain
guess.
aspects of the story that I said are the me, like using fiction to massage that circumstantial situation. The church might be one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she never said like this is
How she
who,
did it.
right?
Yeah.
But she
Mm-hmm.
was a person of faith,
Yeah.
and so I thought that would be a cool way to illustrate that
Yeah.
early on in terms of relying upon a church community in terms of what had to happen with the recreation and or
Yeah.
when it was destroyed, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
did happen. That's
Yeah.
was that actually happened, and she actually did have to go in and remake 9 of the 11 gowns for the bridesmaids and Jackie's dress because this was the height of her commissions, her proudest moment,
Yeah.
and having them displayed all around the shop. Um, everybody asked the question, was it her daughter-in-law?
Mm-hmm.
I made that up. This is the device that I used to get people to continue to read the book so that you would be willing to walk through her life
Mm-hmm.
in terms of that.
Yeah.
But what she said was somebody upstairs had a party and left the bathtub running and it
Okay.
overflowed down to her into her studio. So there are certain aspects of that in terms of how that was recreated, you'd say,
Yeah.
in that way for the book. But like I said, and the way that she talked about it on the Mike Douglas show, and she talks about, I just cried and cried, but I
Yeah.
said there's nothing to do but just drink a lot of coffee. And get this, not to be able
Yeah.
to have to tell Joseph Kennedy, remember that
Yeah.
dress that you commissioned? That was not going to work. So,
Yeah.
but like I said, the upshot and the thing that was also factual was when she tried to deliver it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they were trying to tell her to go around the back of the door to the back. And if I have to go to the back,
Mm-hmm. I'm
you
taking these
can't
dresses with me.
see that she has the right. It
Mm-hmm.
was like so bad because time was really running out, and Janet
Yeah.
Auchincloss kept calling her and saying, "Where are the dresses?
Yeah.
Where are the dresses?" Right?
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
that's how delusional racism is. Like, you would
Yeah.
think you would be waiting for this woman to come and running
Mm-hmm.
down to help to get the dresses in the house. For
Exactly.
goodness sake.
Mm-hmm.
Not pulling rank, for goodness sake, at such a moment.
Exactly. Hmm. I love that she told him
Mm-hmm.
if she couldn't go through that front door, they don't get addresses. I love that because I feel like after everything that she had been through, and that wasn't the end of her story, but after everything she had been through, especially in that week,
Right.
like, there's no way. There's
There's
no way.
no.
You gonna take these dresses this way, or you not taking them at all. I don't care.
That's
So
right.
yeah, I
That's
love that.
right.
And I had heard about that before too. I think that was the first thing I heard, that she had to fix the dresses or remake them in a week, and then they wouldn't let her in, and she refused to give it to them unless they let her in. And I thought, especially understanding, so that was like 1953, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm.
yeah, that
Like,
was
who
amazing.
is that? Like, fire them. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, exactly.
No. But the other aspect in terms of the dress, like,
Mm-hmm.
and the, sort of how Jackie didn't like it and all this other kind of stuff. The other thing that the story gave me the opportunity, like I said, I've been researching Kennedy for some time now.
Yeah.
Um, they allowed me to unpack the mythology a bit
Mm-hmm.
about Jackie and who she
Yeah.
was, because I think a lot of people think about Jackie Endpoint global fashion icon diva, da
Yeah.
da da da. They don't
Hmm.
think about the lonely little girl who was the child of
Yeah.
divorce.
Yeah.
Um, at that point in that marriage, because there's the whole entire mythology around the Kennedy marriage and Camelot and all of that,
Hmm.
right? And so, and like I say, when my book clubs want to talk about or whatever, I say that marriage, and somebody did write this comparable biography several years ago.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
situation was more like Charles and Diana.
Yes.
When you say
Hmm.
that, then people see they had
Yeah.
a lot in common. The same
Yes.
age gap, 12
Hmm.
years. Jackie being relatively sheltered like Diana, even though she had been to
Yeah.
college, she had done traveling stuff, but she was still relatively sheltered.
Hmm.
Um, him being forced to marry because his father had called him for this great position that he was going to have
Yeah.
down the road, and that, basically Joseph said, they're going to think you're a homosexual if you don't get married.
Hmm.
Here's this girl, it's her, she's perfect, she can speak several languages, she's sophisticated, all of this.
Hmm.
Get married. He was forced into it. They didn't spend much time with one another leading up
Yeah.
to the wedding. The other girlfriends,
Hmm.
all of that,
Yeah. Hmm.
very similar.
Yeah.
And as opposed to the great mythology, the Camelot or whatever. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But the thing, like I said, that also interested me in terms of trying to provide some kind of connection or closure in regards to her relationship with Jackie was
Yeah.
that was the very last thing that she had ever done for
Yeah.
her. So was
Yeah.
it this issue of like, oh, she had been forced into that dress, she didn't
Yeah.
like it. It was a whole other, it wasn't her. She wanted to have something more simple or whatever, or
Yeah.
had something else gone into it. Was she putting her feelings of doubt about the marriage
Mm.
onto,
Yeah.
and that's what I thought. I
Mm.
thought it was a projection of her uncertain feelings about, and or potential thought, I was trying to avoid a situation like what my mother got, but actually
Yeah.
I'm getting just what my mother got.
Yeah. Yeah.
This playboy person running around, sleeping there who doesn't really love me, kind of,
Yeah.
and her feelings about that
Yeah.
were very
And
much
and
into
was
that.
she engaged before too?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
She was
Mm.
engaged before to some other guy who her mother told her he does not have the means
Yeah.
to support you in the way in which you are accustomed to be supported. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
she broke it off when she saw this potential of a
Yeah.
sitting senator in the United States coming down the pike who's had wealth and it was part of a wealthy family and all of that. She, gave the dude back his ring and was like, okay, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
hmm exactly. So, yeah, all of that. And, in terms of the way in which, like I said, people think about that situation, think about who Jackie was at that point in time, coming into that circumstance, something different is someone different
Yeah.
than this global icon. And of course, I couldn't resist it when I remembered that detail from the wedding that there were pink gladiolas as part of the flower arrangement.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, my
Yeah.
God,
Especially with
perfect.
Anne making all those flowers, like that being her thing. She knows about flowers. That's so interesting. Wow. And also that in her work she would create flowers. You know, I just thought that was so. First of all, I think it's beautiful because like obviously people have tried to this day to recreate them, but she just made them like it just came from her mind. She just copied what she saw in real flowers. I thought that was just so beautiful. Just so many things about her life was beautiful, and then also tragic.
Yeah.
The different financial issues that she experienced. um, one thing I forgot to talk about was the 6 months that it took her to finish the fashion design program.
Oh,
That I've been, I've talked about my 6 month and low challenge, which, my documentation of will be taking place like next week. That's when you'll start seeing, videos
Okay,
with me
cool.
actually sharing things like that on a regular
Very
basis.
cool.
But I just thought it was so interesting that the way she was treated at the school, how they put her in that other class, or not, was it like you said, wasn't it a classroom, or was it a classroom? A
Us old
cloakroom?
heads remember the times when, whenever you had a classroom at schools,
Mm-hmm.
and there would be this cloakroom, kind of an
Yeah.
anteroom in front of the classroom that was
Yeah.
always for, maybe it's more in northern cities or whatever, where you would be
Yeah.
putting your coats in there. And it
Yeah.
was always something, it was like a little space that was like maybe a quarter of the size
Yeah.
of the room, right? Whatever. So that's how I imagined it was. Not someplace from the hallway, but from the cloakroom
Yeah.
where she was
We used to
forced.
have those when
Yeah,
I was a
we used to
kid.
have them
We
as
don't have
part
them
of,
now. Yeah. Yeah. That's
yeah,
so, it's just so interesting. And then she ended up being the best of everybody, and they
right,
wanted her to
right.
keep them. That I just thought that was just so interesting. The fact
But one
that
of the things I
she,
always point out to
mhm,
people is like that circumstance happened in New York City,
yeah,
was not in the South. It was in New York City
yeah.
where that happened. Mhm.
Hmm. And
Yeah,
New York was supposed to be so progressive, and they were
this,
not.
this.
Hmm.
Exactly, exactly. That's the point. Yeah,
Hmm.
but she
I
went,
even,
got that
yeah,
education that she wanted. So,
yeah. I even tried to do some research to find out about the other people that she might have went to school with, to see like what their careers did.
hmm,
And it looks like maybe a few of them, had some of their stuff in stores and things like that, but we don't know their names.
yeah,
Like we don't talk
no,
about them. Like their
mm-mm.
story it's not even a footnote. It's like, and I just think it's so interesting that they relegated her to the cloakroom, and she was the best.
Yeah,
She was literally,
yeah,
she had
yeah,
already dressed she already made a gown for the first lady of Alabama. So she was
yeah,
way beyond, the people there. I was wondering about, like, when she was afraid to go to Paris. I
mm-hmm.
wondered, because this is how I am. I think about stuff a lot. So I was just thinking, like, how interesting it was that she, decided not to go to Paris, but then she ended up being sent out there anyway.
Right,
So
right,
it's like,
right.
Paris was for her.
Yeah,
And I
Paris
think
was
that's
for
so
her. Right,
interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
That she should have the opportunity to go there and see, hey, I'm already doing
Yeah. Yep.
I already have the, style, in terms of
Hmm.
the quote unquote Parisian affect. So
Yeah.
absolutely. That's how special her stuff is. And any of her gowns, w- they're in museums. That's where they are. It's just the respect that her
Yeah.
craft is held in, the esteem that they are in museums because there's recognition
Yeah.
of what it was that she did that was artistic. And that was my main thought about her from the beginning. Say, this is the story of an artist. And
Yeah.
fashion design is far too often put down or put to the side or not taken seriously or thought of as frivolous or whatever in terms
Yeah.
of that. And that's why I really wanted to tell her life story in the vein of the development of someone who is creating
Yeah.
art, just wearable art in terms of it. So,
Yeah. Well, it's 8:05, so
okay.
I this has been amazing. Like, literally, I can have like a million more questions for you, going line by line, just asking so many questions. But literally, I would say this is the most important book I've read besides the Bible. Like, for me, this it really is. And I just feel like, you told her story in such a beautiful, respectful, and, a way that honored her and
Hmm.
helps keep her legacy alive.
Yeah,
So yeah, I just really appreciate you for creating it. I appreciate you for talking with me tonight. I didn't see any
absolutely.
questions. Yeah, I didn't see any questions, unless anybody has any, but I didn't see any questions. So, if people have questions, how can we get in touch with you, or how can we learn more about you, more about the other novels you've written as well?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, my Instagram account is Piper underscore Huguley. My threads is at Piper Huguley, and I have a website which is at piperhuguley.com. So,
Nice.
mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me tonight.
Thank you
And
for having me.
yes, of course. And favor you weddings and events. So you are going to get the giveaway book. So thank you so
Here,
much for
hope
commenting.
you enjoy.
Yes, thank you. And have a beautiful night. Thank you so
You
much,
do the
Piper.
same. Bye bye.
Bye.